If Nikola Jokic was on the Utah Jazz, they would be better than the current Denver Nuggets team with Jokic. So, Zach, your 60 seconds begins now.
Unquestionably, yes. Unquestionably, yes. Let's go down the list, all right? One, Jokic is going to be Jokic, the best player in the league, right? So that's unquestioned. Two, Lauri Markkanen, great scorer, serves his country, military man, versus Aaron Gordon, complains about losing the dunk contest. Michael Porter Jr., anti-vaxxer, right? Simone Fontecchio, world traveler, not afraid of regulations and travel tips. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, really nice player, think he fits in anywhere. Colin Sexton just scores better, more reliable shooter, more reliable with the ball in his hands. And then the point guard position, Jamal Murray, I don't know, seems like he gets hurt a lot, you know? Give me Chris Dunn, give me Keontae George, give me those guys playing off Jokic. What could Jokic turn those guys into? Jamal Murray, not even an all-star. This dude can't make an all-star team. He can't make an all-NBA. He's bumping up Jokic's stats left and right because Jokic is like, hey, he's never played with an all-star, never played with an all-NBA guy. And look how good he is. Now you're putting all-NBA.
Dave, before you go, Zach, I don't know if you know this, but I'm an Orlando Magic fan, and Aaron Gordon thoroughly deserved those dunk contest awards, and so you're getting subtracted a point.
I'm so sorry that you were forced to buy into a Vucevic, Fournier, Gordon team.
Doesn't matter. You're getting subtracted a point. So, Dave, you have a chance to tie this. Dave, your 60 seconds begins now.
I mean, listen, I think the most important thing to remember here is that the Denver Nuggets just won a title and a playoff run in which they were extremely dominant, and that dominance has continued. That's the story here, is that the Denver Nuggets, as constructed, it's as close to a perfect team as exists right now in the NBA. They are by far the best team in the league. Removing Jokic makes them a lot worse because he's the best player in the world, and it would make Utah much better by adding him. But I think that when you go down the roster, the quality of player, it's just not the same head to head, no matter what Zach says. And I understand the off the court stuff. You got to take that into account when you think about the locker room. I don't think about that stuff. I'm just thinking about the on-court product. Jamal Murray is a little bit of a clone of Steph Curry in the way that he plays off the ball around Jokic. It's a perfect mix. And his handle is so much better than Colin Sexton. His ability to get to the basket. I mean, I just think he's a perfect sidekick. Number 2 guy next to Jokic. Whereas I don't think Colin Sexton could be the third.
I'm going to take this one step further to start this discussion, but do you think the Utah Jazz are better set up for the future than the Denver Nuggets? Or is Jokic just that good where the Nuggets they'll be better for a long time?
Let me start here. So I would say this. The Utah Jazz are slightly younger. I think that their window, or as we call it on Nerder, the hallway, the door is not quite open yet. Like, they haven't started this, we're pushing for top 4 in the West. You know, they're just not there. It's a different phase of team building. Whereas the Nuggets, they've been building now for 5 or 6 years. You know, this is a lot of continuity that's causing them to be so good. I mean, this is same coach, same core players that you've had throughout this entire run. I think that that's something, and Zach, like, we don't see it often, number one, but you can't replicate it.
Right. It's tough to do. I would say this, like, the Jazz are way deeper in terms of rotation. I do think their weapons would complement Jokic just as well as what Denver has. Very different ways, but just as well. This Jazz team is trying to lose, and they're 500. So now you put the best player in the world on the team, and that seems pretty good to me. Like, Denver is developing their bench and the end of their rotation, but it still has like a lot of like, we don't know if this guy's going to be good tonight. Whereas you throw in, you know, you're talking like Jordan Clarkson off the bench. You're talking, you know, real role players who are already established. You know, I don't know if that means like Kelly Olynyk in this world is now the backup center, but whatever, like, or Walker Kessler's like the full-time backup center. But like, there's so much depth there that isn't either an old guy at the end of his rope, like DeAndre Jordan, or young guys who are trying to be good, like Christian Braun. I will never call him Christian Brown. Your name is spelled Braun. And like Peyton Watson, really nice, encouraging young player. They've got some guys like Strother and everything, but those guys aren't completely reliable yet.
I'm with you on the depth. And I do think that regular season, like, you add Jokic to this team, they're a home court advantage team in the playoffs. But once you get to the playoffs, that's when everything sorts itself out, you know, and those players, like, you've got Lowry and you've got Jokic, and I kind of know what they would do. It's the other
Yeah.
guys. You shorten that rotation. Like, you trust Jordan Clarkson in the playoffs?
Playing off of Jokic, yeah, for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
I would say Jordan Clarkson and Jamal Murray are closer than Jamal Murray and Steph Curry in terms of what they would be next to Jokic.
Next to Jokic.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I happen to disagree. But I think part of that is just because Murray is a 3-level scorer. And I don't think that Jordan Clarkson is. This is where Murray.
I think Clarkson.
You can run Murray. I mean, and Clarkson for sure will absolutely run an offense by himself. I think you run better offense with Murray. But I do like Utah's depth. I think that you're right about that. Like, this is going to be a thing that sorts itself out for Denver come playoff time. We'll find out if they're as good as last year in the playoffs once these young guys have to play.
Something Dave said that I want to push back on. He said, like, obviously Denver is the number one team here. I don't know. They have a lower win percentage than the Minnesota Timberwolves, who've never come close to a championship. So you calling them number one team, they have a low win percentage, and then a team that's definitely worse that just lost to the Hornets with a guy going for 62. I don't know. I don't know if that's accurate.
I mean, I do think that there's a little bit of sleepwalking through the regular season here for the Nuggets.
They seem
Game
awake
feels
enough.
easy for them when they turn it on.
Awake enough to beat out the Timberwolves.
If Jokic was on this current Utah Jazz team, would you lock them in as final favorites?
I wouldn't. I would lock them in. I would lock them into the second round of the playoffs, I think.
No, man.
I don't think
you're stopping. I don't think
because
Jokic
is just like it's hard to describe. I didn't watch Wilt. I didn't, you know what I mean? But it feels like that. The way that he's described in the clips you see. It feels like the way he it's just he's unguardable. I don't know. It's hard for me to count him out. Let's just put it that way. The way he plays and the way he is right now, it would be hard for me to count him out. I don't think that they make.
I think they're absolutely the best team in the West. I'd have some questions about who they play in the finals, but in terms of getting through the West, the Jazz team is already really good after a bad start, and now you're telling me the best player in the world is on that team. But that's a title contender.
But back to the prompt. If you were asking me to take the Jazz with Jokic versus the Jazz or the Nuggets with Jokic, I'm taking the Nuggets.
I'm taking the Jazz just simply because, yeah, you're right. Like, when we get to the playoffs, depth it matters less unless there are injuries. Denver, I don't think could sustain injuries. The Jazz with Jokic could sustain injuries and still maintain their level of play.
I mean, it's possible. I will say that we've seen Jokic by himself sustain injuries and make playoff runs without MPJ, without Jamal Murray. But you are going to run into a wall at a certain point because you need other guys. But this is my point about Utah. I have their guys ranked lower than a lot of the guys in the Nuggets. I think 1 for 1 or whatever, however you want to look at it. And then there's the continuity aspect, which we can't even use that here because that's not fair. But I think they're just going to be better at the higher end, even if they lost a guy or two, because by the same token, Utah could easily lose a guy. Guys get hurt all the time.
I guess the Utah team kind of reminds me of two things. One, remember the 95 Magic and how deep they were, and then you go to the 2009 Magic and how deep they were. Mm-hmm. It just reminds me a lot of that in terms of sustaining that.
But they don't have a Hedo Turkoglu to be out there making things happen. And frankly, Dwight Howard and his defense was so important.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
They wouldn't have Jokic is a good defender, but he's not a alter every single game plan for the opposing team defender like Dwight Howard was.
Sure. But you still have dominant center with a bunch of depth.
See, I think it's a little bit more I compare Utah to the Tampa Bay Rays. I just think they've got a lot of really good guys. Right? Who do their job, role players, but no guys that are going to help. You're not saying, oh man, here's our 3, 4, and 5 hitter. If you get Jokic, hey, we got our 3 hitter. But who's going to hit 4th? Oh, probably Lowry Markkanen. Well, who's our 5th hitter? No, Colin Sexton's probably lead off guy.
I think you're disrespecting Evan Longoria, who is an all-time great. I just don't. I don't know. I'm old enough to remember. You have Utah. Maybe make a trade for a veteran to come. I'm old enough to remember Wade Boggs on the Rays and how much that set that franchise forward, in knowing that someday this team's gonna be a problem.
I think, look, Colin Sexton could definitely be like a Carlos Pena for this team.
I just
Zach, you don't know this, but Dave already knows the Tampa Bay Rays are my favorite team, and so Dave,
I figured that out real quick when he
Dave's
randomly
getting
brought
a
that up.
mind swung
Yeah,
and just trying to kiss ass with that comment.
I think it's shameful. I think it's
It
as
is
shameful
shameful.
as all the times the
95
Rays have been
Orlando
cheated in the
Magic.
postseason. You know,
That 95 Orlando Magic team, man.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Zach, you get a -1 for that too. You can't be kissing ass up here. You can't be kissing ass up here.
Listen, pandering is literally the name.
that's
of
what
the
he
game.
just did.
It's
He
pandered
I
in
lost
two
the
sports.
point.
Yeah,
I
you
lost
both
the
lost
point.
points.
Okay,
Both
all
lost.
right. As long as it's
One
fair.
final
As long as
question, and we'll end with this. Let's say that we live in a world where Jokic does not exist.
Mhm.
Which team, the current Denver Nuggets or the current Utah Jazz, would you rather have for this season and for the next 3 seasons?
Ooh, with no Jokic?
With no Jokic, there's a world without Jokic.
I mean, I don't see how Denver is even a definite playoff team. Without
right,
Jokic.
it depends on who you're replacing him with. If
Yeah,
you're saying
I mean,
league average center,
No replace. Yeah, you're just like league. Yeah,
league average center for both, for
let's
Denver.
say I mean, well, maybe he's not league average. But I was thinking all right, so now Kelly Olynyk is their starting center.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to make things fair,
a way to look at it is like this. Because it's hard to say what does it look like on the court, but which, and I'm also not an asset head, so please excuse me for this, but which players do you like better? You know what I mean? Would you start with this team and add pieces to it, or this team and add pieces to it? I mean, both are imperfect.
I guess that's my question.
Yeah.
What would you rather take?
For me, I think today the Denver Nuggets, and part of this again is the aging curve, right? These guys are, Murray is entering his prime, Gordon's in his prime, MPJ's coming into his prime, and it's just a little bit further along in the process for some of them. So I tend to lean toward them. I just think the higher end talent is a little higher end. The starters are better than they are in Utah. But
yeah,
Utah
I guess
got draft assets.
Are you plugging in a center who can kind of do it all?
Right.
A Ben Zobrist, a Carl Crawford type of athlete who can just do whatever. I'm just talking about the type of those are just guys that come to mind when I'm thinking of complete athlete,
Yeah, I know. Hedo Turkoglu. Just
yeah.
Really can just Swiss Army knife type guy.
Just a solid veteran presence that you trust with your life, like a
Jameer Nelson.
Yeah, right. Same.
Yeah. You got me.
Zach, which one? If you had to make a decision though, which roster would you rather start with?
With no Jokic?
No Jokic.
The Jazz. I just think there's more there. I could see the Nuggets with their young guys, because I do like a lot of their young guys. They're just not. I can't be definite that they're going to be something. Whereas with the Jazz, 7-8 dudes in that rotation where I'm like, yeah, give me that guy on my team.
I just think that the Nuggets have more guys that I can look at and say, oh yeah, that's a dude.
I also don't believe in, as much as Denver media is trying to lead us towards this, I don't think Michael Porter Jr. is that guy. I think he's a nice role player who has got a great agent to get him that contract.
He's in a perfect spot no matter
what, you
right?
put him in a lot of other situations, and not even just the medical stuff with him,
right,
where his, there's some real question. I mean, he was going to be the number 2 pick. Granted, it was by the Kings, but the Kings were going to take him number 2 before the injury stuff. They looked at the medicals. They're just like, all right, we can't trust the number 2 pick with this. So we'll go.
And then the family history, right? When you look, his sister, his brother has had huge injuries.
Yeah,
it does seem
I think you put him in a different situation where there's more pressure on him to be a guy, and he's got to play more. I think it probably crumbles.
But I do think that Denver did a good job of protecting him.
Phenomenal job. They handled it as well as you could handle it.
And he looks healthy, right? He looks like whatever the back issue was where he had the surgery, looks like it's not bothering him. And you're right. Playing next to Jokic, what a luxury. It's like Klay Thompson. What would Klay Thompson look like if he didn't have Steph Curry? I don't know. I think that
I've always thought he would look like Reggie Miller.
Well, maybe a little bit like Michael Porter Jr., right? Michael Porter Jr. is like a 6'10" Klay Thompson offensive type. He doesn't want to pass. This is one of the things that's been so amazing about him this season is that you can there's so many shots where I'm like, oh, he's going to force it, and he throws a pass, and I'm like,
every pass comes with a sigh.
So
he just begrudgingly I guess I have to move the ball here.
But his part of that is also though these guys like he's such a smart cutter
Yeah.
that when he throws a pass, he now cuts off the
Right.
pass, and so he's getting a bucket out of it. So I just think that his growth has been pretty impressive, and it doesn't happen without Jokic. But to say you take Jokic away and all that growth is gone, that's a little harsh. I do think he's a pretty good player.
I think he's a good, I think he's a really good talent, but it doesn't always translate into a really good player.
Well, this is where the team context just matters so much. The fact that he is
they have forced him into a role where like this is how you have to play, and he can do that because he's so talented.
I mean, there's a world in which he's Kyle Kuzma, and he's the best player on an awful team, and he's 25 a night on a 25-win team, but here he is bought into being 15 to 18 a night on a 52 55-win team. I think that's mentally that tells me a lot about who he is. There's no squeaking wheels.
There is a world where he does get drafted by the Kings #2, and he is currently dominating Turkey, like just
well, man, him and Şengün would be
oh my god.
If we can we naturalize MPJ? Can the Turkish government naturalize him like Shane Larkin? Add him to the national team.
He's never making Team USA.
Look, man, we keep calling Şengün Baby Jokic. Mm-hmm. Let's see it in some international competition. Yeah. That's actually, that's the next step. All these teams, Jokic can be like, hey, Aaron Gordon, come be Serbian.
You feel pretty Serbian to me?
Come be Serbian.
Yeah.
Come be Serbian and win an Olympic gold medal.
And obviously we mentioned Turkey. That's where NBA legend Hito Turkoglu's from.
Hito Turkoglu.
Yeah.